Well, welcome everyone. This is our fifth session. I'm talking about the archetypical mind. And just a real quick overview, the reason we're even discussing this is that the archetypical mind is the blueprint for all of our experiences in our life. And understanding the archetypes, or how the archetypical mind works, gives us a leg up on how and why we do what we do. Just to briefly again review what we covered last time, what we're talking about is the matrix category, and we're introducing the potentiator category in this session. The matrix and the potentiator work together. They work together in order to prepare or format our mind, body, spirit. Our mind, body, spirit is separate from the archetypical mind. The mind, body, spirit is us. We begin as spirit, just simply a scoop of consciousness that is scaled down to a third density level. The spirit then, the spirit is a concept, so consequently it is a torus. From that is taken the mind, or the spirit is said to create the mind. The mind is a separate torus. And from the mind is created another torus, which becomes the body. So we begin as spirit. We go from spirit to mind to body to create the three aspects of our beingness to explore creation. That complex of us, it puts on what we're calling the spacesuit that is the archetypical mind. Nothing is experienced by the mind, body, spirit in third density without an archetypical mind. We put on the spacesuit. Everything that we experience from then on, whether it be in space-time or in time-space, is experienced through the blueprint of the archetypical mind. Our archetypical mind is pervasive throughout our solar system. Every other solar system will have a different archetypical mind. It might be only slightly different, but it will be different from our archetypical mind because there's no reason to duplicate. The archetypical mind serves all the experiential densities, which means it serves third, fourth, and fifth density. Okay? So everybody's up to date. I wanted to go back and talk a little bit. We didn't really finish all of the matrix, but we attract a thought. What an archetypical mind does is process thought. That's all an archetypical mind does, is process thought. All of our experience is the processing of thoughts. So we have our concept complex processing thoughts in order to create the impressions and the perspectives that we have that we are living a life in a physical body. A thought is attracted, and let me back up, there's a significant difference in how we experience the archetypical mind between when we first experience third density. In other words, as soon as we enter third density and we are theoretically at our lowest level of consciousness, our experience is going to be dramatically different than it is going to be as we have lived numerous lifetimes and again theoretically raised our consciousness. The archetypical mind does not change at any point in time. It is consistent. What changes is the mind, body, spirit as we have experiences. We are the only changing element as far as the archetypical mind is concerned. The archetypical mind does not change. We begin as spirit the matrix of the spirit is not like most of the other archetypes. The matrix of the spirit, the significator of the spirit, and the great way of the spirit are unique in that what begins as the object logos and the subject logos do not transform. They do not change. We'll use, for example, the potentiator of the spirit. When we begin, say we begin with our first thought that we process as a third density entity, then we will experience saw, which is awareness, as the subject in logos. Law will virtually not be experienced. As we go through the process and we collect or we liberate consciousness, the transformation that takes place is saw and law change places. Law becomes the object logos and saw becomes the subject logos. So we begin with the possibility of awareness, and that transforms into wisdom with awareness as our consciousness rises. That doesn't happen in the matrix of the spirit, the significator of the spirit, or the great way of the spirit. This is the only archetype that has two distortions as both the subject and the object. Da and Ta. The reason that this is like this is this separates us and makes us the most dramatic, clean canvas to paint our personality upon. This is considered to be the alpha. This is the beginning, this is the farthest away from the Creator that we will ever get in third density. What happens, and we're not ready to talk about the great way yet, the great way of the spirit is the omega. And as we raise our consciousness, as we move through evolution, what actually happens is the matrix of the spirit integrates with the great way of the spirit. The great way of the spirit is unity. Not to give anything away. So what is happening is our alpha as a whole unit is going from a distorted distance away from the Creator to unity. But the archetypes themselves do not transform within themselves. The archetypes of Great Way and Matrix integrate on the spirit level, in the spirit category.
And that's why it's a condition to overcome.
Well, this creates a condition. We have 5 conditions. The reason that this is a condition to overcome is because this creates the condition of innocence. Primordial darkness is how we begin, and that means that we have no information whatsoever. All information about anything is absolutely wiped clean. It's like a hard drive that has nothing on it but a basic operating system, waiting for that first keystroke in order to turn it on and get it started. So this is absolute innocence. We know absolutely nothing. Okay? Now, just again to briefly review the other matrix categories that we start with, the mind, all the way up the category, is the decision maker. It decides with every thought that we have how we will process that thought. The mind is the spirit, it is consciousness with an extra dose of free will. And we're calling this consciousness because the matrix of the spirit, which is our spirit, that's what we begin, or where we would begin. Our spirit no longer is just consciousness. It is wiped clean. And the matrix of the mind gets adds an additional dose of free will, So we're calling this consciousness because it recreates, it reiterates the original subject-object relationship that the Creator establishes when He injects free will into itself. So this is a duplication on a greatly scaled down, it's a greatly fractalized experience of that original subject-object relationship. Okay? So we're calling this actually free will / consciousness. The matrix of the mind is our ego. Our ego is synonymous with free will. The size and strength of our ego is directly proportionate to how significantly we perceive ourselves to be distanced from the Creator. The farther away we perceive ourselves to be from the Creator, the greater our ego, and consequently the greater our pain and suffering. Okay? This is considered to be an algorithm, which means that it is part of a larger equation that will work to overcome the conditions of third density, the conditions of the archetypical mind, and lead us back to the Creator. The matrix of the body, we are in constant motion with no means of stopping that motion. But the first transaction that we make, we are even functioning. We're in constant motion, but it's like a gyroscope that is in perfect balance. Okay? As soon as we start processing experiences, as soon as we start processing thoughts, then that even functioning begins to get out of balance. And we go through a long period, doesn't have to be long, we just choose to make it long, multiple lifetimes, where that even functioning becomes even more out of balance as we experience what we don't like. And it's by experiencing what we don't like and experiencing pain and suffering as a result that we awaken and begin to only seek what we do like. So the first however many lifetimes that we choose to have will be the process of experiencing what we don't like. This is the wheel of samsara that the Buddha referred to. We experience birth, suffering, and death, and we'll do that over and over and over until we have had enough, and then we decide to start working on getting out of this. For those with a Christian background, the story of Jesus in front of the temple overturning the tables and being upset with the vendors in front of the temple had nothing to do with where they were selling their goods. The story was meant to reflect that period of learning what we don't like, wasting our time, so to say, on physical things, instead of spending our lifetime working on the spiritual things. So the process has been reiterated in parable or direct instruction form numerous times in our history. But the matrix of the body is chaos. It provides chaos. We begin as motion. The antithesis of that is stillness. So as we move through creation, as we move through evolution, our consciousness rises. What happens is we surrender the chaos and experience stillness. In other words, these two positions swap. Okay? Any questions about any of that? Good. Okay, well, thanks for coming.
When you say swap, it means that one takes priority or over the other.
Yeah. Again, to review, what is happening every time we process a thought It's processed through the mind, begins at the matrix. We attract the thought. We don't create the thought. We attract the thought to the matrix of the mind, and it enters the matrix of the mind. So immediately we view this with our ego. And we are at the low levels of consciousness, we view that in chaos with our ego. Because the initial object and logos of the matrix of the mind is also Da, which is movement. The process is that at each level, at each category, the mind will poll the body, and it will also poll the spirit for input. In other words, it's like the mind gets this thought, and then it passes it to the body department and says, what do you think about this, guys? How should I respond to this? And then they report back to the mind, and of course what the mind, the body at lower consciousness is going to reflect back is chaos and motion. That's all it's got to work with. This is not an intelligent category. This is a sensory data category. And so what it is feeling, what it's experiencing tactically and visually and so forth, it's going to report back to the mind, well, it's chaos. While we remain in low consciousness, the spirit is polled, but it is not recognized. It's like it's not even there as far as the mind is concerned. It's over here going, hey, well, I'm innocent, I need to know something. Okay, but whatever it's telling the mind doesn't recognize it. The reason that it doesn't recognize it is because of this guy right here. This is the potentiator of the mind. The potentiator of the mind begins in low consciousness with Lucifer as the object and logos. Lucifer is unconsciousness, and that is the characteristic of the potentiator of the mind. So, the potentiator of the mind, actually, if you consider its influence, it becomes, let me do this, it walls off the spirit and shuts off the potentiator of the body. This is the area that we are processing thought with while we remain in lower consciousness. So this over here is not even considered while we remain unconscious, while we remain in low consciousness. Until, when considering the Hawkins map of consciousness that rates the levels of consciousness, until we get to the area of 200, spirit is not recognized. Until we get to the area of about 200, this is not recognized. Potentiator of the body is not recognized.
When you get to where, sorry?
Around 200.
To the body, the potentiator of the body? Okay.
Yeah. So we are functioning while we remain in low consciousness, while we remain everything below courage. And the reason that he referenced this as courage is we have the courage to go against the controls that we've become accustomed to and venture out to consider other possibilities.
All right, so up until 200, you're basically working with potentiator of the mind, matrix of the body, and that's about it.
That is of what is preparing the thought. Now, there's more above. But the preparation of the mind, body, spirit for processing the thought is pretty much limited to the potentiator of the body, the potentiator of the mind, the matrix of the mind, and the matrix of the body.
And then you said around 200, then the potentiator of the body is brought into it a little bit more.
Yeah. And what is happening, okay, what is happening is this guy right here, stillness, is beginning to awaken, which is instilling in the body, the matrix of the body, a little bit of calm, a break in the action, the stillness. It is also means that saw awareness is beginning to awaken. And that's beginning to awaken at about 200, which is the courage. So this is not swapped yet. This won't totally swap until we get to fifth density.
Is it possible to use an actual example? I mean, of something happening.
Can you give me one? Can you give me a thought? I have difficulty with defining an individual thought in order to run it through the process.
An individual thought.
Yeah,
Well-
this is done a thought at a time.
Okay, well, level of 200 is courage, so you're coming out of chaos. So what's a thought that would represent more of
I
more
can
of
do
you
this.
of awakening?
I can do this. Just a simple thought. I can do this.
Or there's more
I can
to there's more to
understand.
things than just me.
That seems impossible.
Okay, here's the complication. Let me explain a little bit more while you're thinking about a thought. Okay, in the thinking about a thought, while we are in this range right here, the thought is going to be what's referenced as a discursive thought. There's no spiritual. All of this is going to be dealing with symbols.
And it's going to be dealing with survival more than it's going to be dealing with anything else.
Yeah, but in the form of symbols. This is going to be dealing with processing via words
Mhm.
or tactile experience. For example, you actually feel a flower. That's still discursive. That's not a direct experience because it is only functioning with the body in order to get that. So you smell a flower, it smells really nice. You go out and lay in the grass in a spring day and it feels really good. It does, but you're still not significantly receiving input from the spirit.
Okay, what I'm what I'm thinking is that there's times when something will happen and an immediate body sensation occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm aware of the body sensation, but wondering why did what just happened create that body sensation that then also creates thoughts?
Well,
Or am I further?
you're way down the line.
Okay.
This is not feeling any body sensations. This is
Okay.
all taking place in time space.
Okay.
Okay? The body sensation, even identifying, recognizing body sensations, doesn't happen until the next whole category.
Okay.
here.
So why
So
wouldn't
once again, I'm jumping ahead.
something like there's more to life than just this? Wouldn't that be an example of starting to move out of this? Like if someone's just basically surviving, they're part of what they can perceive as a rat race. There's more to life than
That's the awakening of this, of awareness.
right. That's what I'm saying. That's what we were trying to come up with was the thought, right?
Yeah, that's the awakening of awareness.
There's more to life than just what I'm experiencing.
Mm-hmm. When awareness here is stimulated, it works just like a tuning fork. And if you've got a whole room full of tuning forks that are all keyed to the key of C,
Uh-huh.
and you strike one tuning fork, all the other tuning forks begin to vibrate because it resonates with that one C note. When this is stimulated, this is also stimulated. Everywhere you have saw, it becomes stimulated. Here, Well, it's all in these two categories. So, say you have that thought, and you have that thought because of the strength of your will. The strength of your will, which is part of the mind, body, spirit, it's outside of the archetypical mind, becomes our engine at this level. And it is purely by the strength of your will that, you know, you're Conan and you've been pushing the wheel around all your life, and all of a sudden, I've had enough of this, I want to break free.
Mm-hmm.
And so you begin to break free by becoming aware, and you begin to learn. You begin to stimulate the other awareness categories, or archetypes. And it is a process, and it is really at that point that you begin to move the scale where, you know, Da has been up here and Saw has been down there, and you start to move a little bit. And that process continues all the way through the experiential densities until Da is inconsequential, it's dormant essentially, and awareness is way up here on top. That's how we incrementally move forward and receive benefit from it. But understand that at this point we are still dealing with physical things. That's all we're dealing with is physical things. And even here we have to awaken, begin to surrender Lucifer, unconsciousness. We have to begin to awaken up, and even to start activating Saw, which begins at that point to lessen our unconsciousness and inability to experience this input and potentially this input from the whole spirit category. Okay? Now, additionally, this is a condition. This is the first condition. It is one of it is the primary condition that we strive to overcome in the experiential densities. And that's why it begins as our alpha, and as it integrates with the as yet untalked about great way of the spirit, which is unity, that's the transformation of our total mind, body, spirit being. It moves us out of the archetypical mind, out of the experiential densities, and into sixth density, the beginnings of sixth densities as unity. In other words, when matrix of the spirit and great way of the spirit integrate, we will be graduating out of fifth density and into sixth density.
To graduate from 50 to 60, so really that integration, we're still working on that integration when we move into 4D and 5D then?
Yes, we are. We're working on all of this. There are significant things that happen at the level of 500, which does not automatically happen when we move to 4D. We can graduate to 4D with 400 on the consciousness scale. And the first period bits of our time in fourth density will be moving up to experience 500. We may graduate, 499 is the top of third density. And we may reach 499, but we can graduate at 400. So some folks may reach 499 and graduate at 499.
In 3D?
Huh?
In 3D to 4D or 4D into 5D?
In 3D into 4D. Yeah. So it's not necessarily so that when you graduate to fourth density that you automatically are going to experience love.
You may have work to do in the beginning of that 4D process.
Right.
But you've done enough to graduate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I well suspect that it's easier to do the work in
In
4 to
4D.
5 and 4D
I
than it
agree.
is in 2D.
That damn veil.
Yeah. Now, another condition that is created by both the combination of the potentiator of the mind and the matrix of the mind is the I perspective. The foundation for that is our ego. And on top of that ego is unconsciousness, and when you put the two together, you get the I perspective. The I perspective is what causes us to think that we are isolated beings. Causes us to be able to only experience what goes on inside of us. That we can't feel, we can have empathy and sympathy and all that stuff, and we can symbolically feel what other people are doing, but we cannot know what other people are feeling. And that's what creates the isolation within our physical being. As we raise our consciousness, this obviously begins to dissolve, as does our ego.
So if you work on those feelings of isolation, say in emotion processing, you're helping that process along.
Yes, you are. Absolutely you are. You're speeding that process along significantly.
Is it sometimes an integration and thus certain aspects dissolve, or is there sometimes a complete dissolving and sometimes an integration?
Well, understand that nothing ever is lost. Nothing ever goes away. There's never, gee, it goes away like it never existed. It's always an integration, because this is designed to skew us to be farther away from the Creator, which we are not. We are never. It's just the perspective. And so as we transform these, as we change these conditions, all we're doing is integrating the polar opposites.
Because we are everything.
We're everything.
So it's pretty awesome since, you know, I won't say names out loud on the thing, but
Her.
this little Missy right here, since she's dealing with that particular topic, then that's kind of an exciting thing to know, because that, I mean, for you to be so aware that that's what you're working on, I mean, that's a huge thing right there. Little Missy.
Yes. Yes to that. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Any questions so far? We got that? So when a thought comes in, it is being prepared by the ego, by the chaos. Chaos is added to it. When it's really, really, really good and chaotic, give it up here to the potentiator. The potentiator makes it even more oblique by handing it unconsciousness and the I perspective that you're isolated. Okay? As we raise our consciousness, then we do that because we are awakening law, which this is the only law that we have, wisdom, in these two layers here. And this is essentially overlooked. So this is the next step to activate, to begin a contribution, because when this begins to be activated, the mind is still going to be polling the body, it's still going to be polling the spirit, but it's not going to be able to recognize the spirit. It's only going to see the body.
So what's the, I mean, I understand that as you raise your consciousness, that's when we awaken law and the potentiator of the body, and so that we start polling the potentiator of the body. What difference do we see when we start polling the potentiator of the body?
Well,
You just feel more balanced, less chaos?
you're surrendering this guy because it's wisdom.
Okay.
And the wisdom is saying, well, that's stupid.
Surrendering more of the ego and feeling more calmness.
Uh-huh. What happens about the time that we get ready to graduate to fourth density, spirit is already being experienced by then. Okay? So these guys remain the same. We're still the alpha down here. We're getting input from Saul. Matter of fact, the spirit should become activated somewhere around 200.
Spirit of potentiator, the spirit.
Well, the spirit category.
Okay.
The spirit category should be activated somewhere around 200. What the potentiator of the spirit is doing is giving us light. Light is information. So you remember this guy is down here in innocence, the matrix of the mind, or the matrix of the spirit is down here in innocence, knows nothing. And so when this becomes activated, the potentiator of the spirit, then with every thought, we're getting light. We're getting information. We're getting an activation of saw, more awareness. Now what's interesting to note, we're getting light from day one over here. People may say, well, gee, I'm not stupid. I mean, I've been getting information my whole life and all my previous lives. Yes, you have. But that's information that supports intelligence, which is symbolic. It is not direct experiential information. The difference between that and spiritual information is direct experience.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Just say that one more time.
Okay? The information that we have been collecting in lower consciousness, okay, before the spirit is activated, is intellectual information. It's physics, it's biology, it's how to get to the grocery store without getting lost. It's all the stuff that is presented in symbols.
Okay.
All the stuff you studied in school, everything that is presented in symbols, in words, and physical contact stuff is what we've been collecting, and it's what we confuse with information of a spiritual nature, with light. That's information in and of itself. This is light / information that comes with the potentiator of the spirit. The difference being, this is direct experience of the Creator. This is what allows us to become interdimensional. This is what aligns us with our higher self. This is what raises our consciousness. Okay? This is, at this point, primarily awareness. Awareness right here, this is the light, the source of the light is awareness in the potentiator of the spirit. Awareness is what we will have available to us in third density for direct experience. This is the inherent characteristic that we learn in third density, is awareness. That is our task. Now, when we become more aware, we gain incrementally love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. But it's not available to us as direct experience. Only awareness is available to us as direct experience in third density. So that's why we only experience loving instead of love. Once we graduate to fourth density, and we, assuming that we come in as high as we can come in fourth density, then we very quickly can experience, direct experience, love at the 500 level. That is additional light information. It's the same configuration. These two have begun to transform. But it's the same archetypical mind. It's the same archetype. The archetype doesn't change. The content changes because we change. Okay? Any questions?
Not right now.
Okay. So, this begins to be activated as we surrender unconsciousness, as we surrender Lucifer. Lucifer begins to swap with awareness here. We gain significant awareness, so in the higher densities of the experiential densities, instead of having to deal with unconsciousness, we're dealing with more awareness. These transpose, so this actually becomes a boost to us to have additional awareness instead of the objection. Lucifer is the light bearer by name. That's what his name means. Lucifer is a distortion of a distortion, but still an archetype of the Creator.
It's such a shame that it became associated with the concept of Satan.
Well, only because of it being unconsciousness. And if you're unconsciousness and you want to get out of unconsciousness, yeah, you don't like Lucifer. You're mad as hell. But from a Creator standpoint, it is a dramatic accelerator and intensifier to the process of having experiences to know yourself. And Lucifer was apparently was a dramatic discovery when Lucifer was created, because it was such an accelerator.
Did 60 create Lucifer?
Yeah, it was a creation. As well, actually, Melchizedek was the creator, as Melchizedek was the creator of Da and Ta.
So Melchizedek created Lucifer?
Uh-huh. It's just the flip of an antithesis of one of the inherent characteristics. Ta and Da. Da is the antithesis of Ka. Ta is the antithesis of Ya, which is unity, which were creations. These only exist, Lucifer, Da, and Ta, which are the only ones in our octave, are 6th density consciousness. In order to be an archetype, you have to be a 6th density consciousness. In order for Da and Ta to graduate from 6th density to 7th density, they must merge back. Da must merge back with Ka, and Ta must merge back with Ya before they can graduate to 7th density.
Okay. Can you say that again, but don't use the Ta and Da, use the other names?
The other names? Yes.
Yeah.
Movement and separation and unconsciousness are all 6th density consciousnesses. They are creator beings. Okay? In order for movement, separation, and unconsciousness to graduate to 7th density, movement must merge back with stillness. Separation must merge back with unity. Unconsciousness must move back with law, but there's a step in between there.
With
wisdom.
wisdom. So I don't have it memorized well enough to follow you. When you start doing that, that's when I lose you.
Sorry.
And I'm like, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So this is a whole process of consolidation. In the creation of experiences, Lucifer does not create their own experiences. Lucifer participates in other experiences that are created. In other words, for example, love, Ra, created...
So they're always part of an algorithm?
Always part of everything is part of an algorithm. So our earthly experience is a creation, original creation of wisdom, and became a child of love. In other words, love took over our processes, our experience after a while. And Lucifer participates. 12% of the energy in our experience is a contribution by Lucifer, which is the most that he participates in any experience. Love participates to 55%, and the rest is divided between the other inherent characteristics.
So in each archetype, the percentage of each of the five are, each of the, however many are different. The percentages are different.
Different, entirely different. Yeah, and it's a mix and match. It's kind of like, investing in a stock or funding a new company. Is it, well, I'll take this much of this one and this much of that one.
So the higher the percentage of Lucifer, the more difficult the experience is.
That's my understanding, yes. But 12% is the most that he participates, and these 12% in our experience. So love is 55% with 12% from Lucifer, that's 67%. So 2/3 of our experience is divided between love and Lucifer, and the other third is divided among the other characteristics, other archetypes.
When you say that the discovery of Lucifer for the acceleration of our getting to know ourselves was such a big discovery, do you mean adding that into our archetypical mind? Adding Lucifer? What do you mean?
Adding it as an archetype, period.
Yeah, adding it as an archetype.
Yeah, have it as an available element to put into the archetypical mind. And if you remember, that I've been advised, there are 32 archetypes, including the 5 inherent characteristics, and including free will. So when you back those 6 out, there's 26 distortions that we only know about movement and separation and unconsciousness. And there are a bunch more out there to mix and match, to create octaves and do their own thing, do their own archetypical minds. Okay? And I'm going to take a break. Y'all good?